Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000?
Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic.
Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000.
Delta Sierra Juliet, what type of aircraft is it?
I cannot affirm. It is 4 bright. It seems to me like landing lights.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. The aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above.
Delta Sierra Juliet, roger. And is it a large aircraft, confirm?
Unknown due to the speed it's traveling. Is there any Air Force aircraft in the vicinity?
No known aircraft in the vicinity.
Melbourne, it's approaching now from due east towards me.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me 2-3 times at a time at speeds I cannot identify.
Roger, what is your actual level?
My level is 4,500, 4500.
And confirm you cannot identify the aircraft?
Affirmative.
Roger, stand by.
Melbourne, Delta Sierra Juliet. It's not an aircraft, it is...
Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne. Can you describe the aircraft?
Delta Sierra Juliet, as it's flying past, it's a long shape. Cannot identify more than before me right now, Melbourne.
Roger, and how large would that object be?
Melbourne, it seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me. Also, it's got a green light and sort of metallic. It's all shiny on the outside.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
It's just vanished.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
Melbourne, would you know what kind of aircraft I've got? Is it a type of military aircraft?
Delta Sierra Juliet, confirm that our aircraft just vanished.
Say again?
Is the aircraft still with you?
It's on approaching from southwest.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
The engine, is it rough idling? I've got it set at 23, 24, and the thing is...
Delta Sierra Juliet, roger, what are your intentions?
My intentions are to go to King Island, Melbourne. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering, it's not an aircraft.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
Melbourne.
Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne.
Those were the last words of Frederick Valentich, a 20-year-old Australian pilot. Shortly after this communication between Frederick Valentich and Melbourne air traffic, Valentich would disappear, with neither his body nor the airplane ever being found. Some point to this case as being definitive proof of alien activity, while others remain skeptic. But how did Valentich get into the situation? How does an experienced pilot have a UFO sneak up on him? How does a pilot and his aircraft just go missing? Let's start at the beginning and get to know Frederick Valentich. Valentich was enthusiastic about flying since he was a teenager when he started taking flying lessons. By the time Valentich was 18, he obtained a pilot license. By October 1978, Valentich had attained a Class 4 instrument rating, which permitted him to fly at night in visual meteorological conditions, and had 150 hours of flight time behind him. It's all pretty significant accomplishments for someone his age. To put this into perspective, a sport pilot certificate requires you to log 20 plus hours of flight time. A recreational pilot certificate requires you to log at least 30 flight hours. And for the pinnacle of pilot license, the airline transport pilot certificate requires you to log 1,500 hours. There's a lot more that goes into getting certificates and license to be a pilot, but we can see that Valentich had a decent amount of flight hours, although nowhere near professional standards. Everything about Valentich's flight seemed simple. He would take off from Moorabbin Airport on the evening of October 21st, 1978, and his destination, Kings Island in Bass Strait, was going to be only a 90-minute flight. On October 21st, the day of the flight, Valentich filed a flight plan with Moorabbin Airport, declaring his trip to the island. Oddly, though, he didn't inform King Island Airport, his destination, of his trip, which meant that with his trip taking place at night, the runway lights weren't going to be turned on for him. Now, while Bass Strait has a reputation for treacherous flying conditions, the weather on the 21st was clear. Valentich is believed to have told flight officials at Moorabbin he was going to King Island to pick up 4 friends, and he even would take 4 life jackets with him. But some officials have stated that Valentich told them that he was going to collect crayfish on the island. The official report concluded neither of these reasons had any evidence to support them. Ken Lewin of the Royal Australian Air Force had this to say about Frederick's flight. It was a fairly normal exercise. He had an appropriate instrument rating for the trip. It was a very straightforward flight, and I could see no reason why it shouldn't have concluded successfully. What happened 3/4 of an hour into that flight, I think, will be one of the great mysteries of Australian aviation. A little after 6 in the evening, with a full tank of fuel, Frederick Valentich took off from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne in a 4-seat, single-engine Cessna 182L light aircraft. The flight plan had estimated time intervals of 41 minutes to Cape Otway and a further 28 minutes from there to King Island at an altitude of around or just under 5,000 feet. As he took off from Moorabbin, Valentich established two-way radio communications with Melbourne Flight Service Unit, or FSU. Valentich made radio contact with air traffic control in Melbourne at 7:06 p.m. And this is when Valentich had his exchange to air traffic control about the mysterious aircraft. Valentich continued to speak with air traffic control in Melbourne about the craft until 7:12 p.m., and that was the last anyone heard from him. The search for Valentich spanned over 4 days, but no wreckage or any other physical evidence would be found. There was a small oil slick that was spotted on the sea surface just near the Cape Otway lighthouse, and this is where Valentich radioed shortly before his strange encounter begun, but analysis of the oil slick showed that this wasn't aviation fuel, and this clue was quickly abandoned. After 2 weeks, the Victorian Department of Transport would conclude that the cause of Valentich's disappearance was unknown, and it was assumed that whatever did happen to Valentich was fatal. While it was considered unusual that no wreckage was found during the search, this was not thought of as a conclusive evidence that he had not crashed into the ocean. The difficulty of any search at sea, combined with the rough nature of the water in Bass Strait, may have caused the wreckage to sink or disperse in such a way that it left no trace. I think it's pretty common to have heard of an airplane that crashed into the ocean and would never be recovered. Some famous cases include Egypt Air Flight 804 in 2016, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 in 2014, and Flying Tiger Line Flight 739 in 1962. Oh, and there was a little case of someone called Amelia Earhart. What really added to the difficulty for the search and rescue teams was that Valentich's Cessna was small enough that it did not show up on Melbourne air traffic radar. So there was actually no way of verifying exactly where Valentich was prior to losing radio contact. All that remained of, physical evidence of Valentich's disappearance was that final baffling radio transmission. So now that we know the mystery behind the disappearance of Frederick Valentich and the facts surrounding the case, it's time we dig into the theories around his disappearance. In our first theory, some have floated the idea that Valentich could have deliberately misled air traffic control and used this as a cover to disappear. At the time of the incident, Valentich's Cessna would have had enough fuel to fly another 800 kilometers. more than enough to get him out of the vicinity of where they were searching for him. Valentich did also give 2 contradictory reasons for his flight to Keene Island. He was going to pick up friends, or he was going to pick up crayfish. However, there is no really evidence that supports this theory. But then you could make the argument that if someone wanted to disappear, they wouldn't want there to be any evidence to begin with. Usually, if you have the intention of disappearing, you wouldn't want to leave a trail, right? Our second theory, this is the theory everybody is here for. Frederick Valentich was abducted by aliens. At a quick glance, this case seems incredibly easy to think that this is a prime example of alien abduction. Historian Reg Watson has been researching the disappearance for many, many years, and in 2012, when the documents around Valentich's disappearance were released to the public, Watson said that these files backed up his belief that this was a UFO and that caused his disappearance. According to Watson, there was also a ton of UFO sightings in 1978. Sightings were seen not only from Tasmania, they were seen as far away as South Australia, right through the coast of Western Australia, even up to the coast of NSW. To back up this theory, on the evening of October 21st, the same day of Valentich's disappearance, Melbourne plumber Roy Manifold was driving along the south coast when he stopped to take some photos of the sunset. When Manifold developed those photos later on, he remarked, "I observed this mark on the print that looked like a developing error or something. They mused it up. I said, just a minute. That night I took that is exactly the night that this guy disappeared." This photo would be examined by both an Australian photo lab and was sent to the United States for a computer analysis. Both teams found that the negative contained no dirt nor damage. This led them to believe that Manifold had captured a solid and metallic object. Manifold believes the photograph does show something, but his final remarks does leave it a little open-ended. He would go on to say that, "Unfortunately, I didn't see it, and I didn't hear anything that night either. First time I've had something on my printings, and I've done thousands of photographs, and without any incidents of anything like that on any of them." Now, as someone who does dabble in photography, there have been maybe 4 or 5 times out of the hundreds of thousands of photos I've taken where I caught something that kind of freaked me out at first. I thought it was paranormal, but it just ended up being a bird or related to something in the photo. You see, depending on your shutter speed, you can catch some strange movement in photos that distorts an object or makes it look alien. You can also get hyper focused on what you're trying to capture that you actually end up missing out on things happening in your surroundings. However, other witnesses would also come forward and say that they had seen unusual lights over the Bass Strait the night of Frederick Valentich's disappearance. Our third and final theory: Frederick Valentich was just an inexperienced pilot and crashed due to becoming disoriented. Although I did say Valentich had 150 hours of flight time, this is still immensely less than what is required to become a professional pilot. 150 hours is enough time to become good at something, but it's hardly enough time to master something. Now, to put this into perspective, 150 hours is equal to roughly 6.25 days. For something as complex as piloting, it's going to take more than 6.25 days to become an expert pilot. Unfortunately for our boy Frederick, his schooling confirms that he was in way over his head. You see, he had twice been rejected by the Royal Australian Air Force due to inadequate education. Now, he did receive a private pilot license in 1977 and was studying for a commercial pilot's license, but Valentich failed all 5 of his exam subjects, not once, but twice. And just a month before his disappearance, again failed 3 subjects. Further, his involvement in 3 flying incidents came to the attention of officials. Once, he received a warning for having strayed into restricted airspace, and twice he was cited for deliberately flying blindly into a cloud, for which he was under the threat of prosecution. So yeah, not exactly the greatest background, and one that raises a ton of red flags. With Valentich being an inexperienced pilot, what happened? Some Department of Transport officials speculated that Valentich had become disoriented and had inadvertently began to fly his aircraft upside down. You see, in this case, the lights he had reported above him were in reality the lights of his own plane being reflected off the waters below. To also play into him seeing a UFO, a computer search of the sky during the day, time, and place of Valentich's flight reveals that the 4 points of bright light he almost certainly seen were actually the following: Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the bright star of Antares. In fact, the striking conjunction was shaped as a vertically elongated diamond, thus explaining Valentich's saying of the UFO that it had a long shape. It's also reported that Valentich was a huge UFO believer and may have even talked to his girlfriend the day before about aliens and alien abductions. Now, we have covered on this channel how the brain can be incredibly powerful, and it tricks you into believing what you are seeing. Bloody Mary, sleep paralysis, Annalise Michel, so on and so forth. All of these cases show the brain, along with the power of suggestion, turning people's perception into reality. So if Valentich believed in aliens, and he may have jumped to the conclusion that he saw a UFO, his perception became his reality. In 2013, there was an investigation by retired United States Air Force pilot James McGaha and paranormal investigator Joe Nickel, and they proposed that Valentich had entered a so-called graveyard spiral. This is a sensory illusion when pilots become disoriented, particularly due to losing track of the horizon. A graveyard spiral is caused when a pilot attempts to climb when the wings are banked and the plane is descending. This results in a rapid increase in the speed of descent, similar to water swirling down a drain. And just to kind of wrap things up, allegedly Australian researcher Keith Basterfield did state in 2013 that parts of an aircraft wreckage with partials matching serial numbers to Valentich's plane were found in Bass Strait 5 years after his disappearance. So, yeah, maybe Valentich was just an inexperienced pilot who was in over his head, and he was chasing something that was never there. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Besides Black Eyed Kids, this is my first alien story, and alien believers are going to hate me, but I think Valentich had some type of spatial disorientation happening due to him being inexperienced. When I first heard this story, I was so interested in it, and I was like, yeah, this is an alien abduction story. But once you start looking into the finer details, it's just another story of human error. And I was really, really intrigued in the story and wanted it so badly to have an alien abduction cliffhanger. Now, out of all of the paranormal topics we cover, I'm actually most likely to believe in aliens. I know, right? But I don't think this is it. And trust me, we're gonna get into some of the freakier alien stories later on. But just chalk this up to being Occam's razor. I think that the simplest explanation for Valentich's disappearance is the answer to this story. But again, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please, 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 everyone be generous, be polite. I am all for people disagreeing with each other, but please be respectful towards each other. No name calling, no just being mean. Just be respectful, have an engaging conversation, and let's actually have fun with this. Let's not treat each other like the other part is loony and the other part is true, so on and so forth. Please be nice. Please have a conversation down in the comments below. I've been Conrad Iacobellis, and I hope to see you all in the next episode. Please, please, please do like and subscribe. I know tons of people say that. It really does help build engagement, and I would love to continue to bring you guys free content on this channel. Kisses, hugs, belly rubs, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Peace!